Hello, everyone, and welcome on into. We still don't have a catchy name. I come here every week, and I'm saying we need a catchy name for the show here. But welcome on into college football player props, powered by Unabated. I'm Thomas Viola. Normally, that's Chris K. Today, Collin Sherwin helping us out here. Another one of the fantastic members from our college football projection crew. Chris needed a little bit of time off, and I am absolutely locked in because let's face it, Collin, tonight, Syracuse versus UNLV right here in Las Vegas. Let's go Orange. This matchup looked a lot juicier from my perspective 2 weeks ago. It's not looking as good right now, even
at all.
even with the absolute insanity going on in the quarterback situation for UNLV. And we will absolutely be talking about that game and plenty more here on the show today. And you guys know the drill as well. Throw your questions in the chat. Good to see some people already here. Jansen saying, Tom, in the Orange ain't got it in them. We'll see. I'll tell you this much. I do have Syracuse money line. Like, absolutely. Have to. But we will be talking about that game and plenty more here on the show today. Throw your questions in the chat as well. Sports Videos getting us started over under on Gene T this week. We're going to be talking about him. Don't worry. Even if that's something that we don't have a projection for, if that's something that's being saved, we have to talk about Ashton Gene T on this show. And I really hope I'm pronouncing his name right because I've only read it. I haven't actually heard it yet.
I think it's Genty, I believe. But I had that under last week. I saw that 164 and just instinctively went, that's too high. And It would have been if he didn't break a 54-yarder and a 60-plus yarder, both for TDs, when he was actually captured in the backfield, like completely down. And he just took off the tackle like Gary Sanders and took it to the house twice.
He is absolutely absurd. It's completely wild. 13 touchdowns on the season already, and he had one game where he didn't play.
Yeah, no, and looks like he's going to be in that Heisman conversation at the end of the year as well.
Yeah.
That's going to be a super interesting one this year. How do you grade Travis Hunter? To me, he's the best player in college football. If you're a plus player on both sides of the ball, I mean, if I had a vote, he'd probably get mine right now. But if Cam Ward can go back to being Cam Ward as he wasn't against Chris's Hokies last week, if he can get back to that next level, I think he can certainly be in the conversation. And Nico at Tennessee, I think, is also going to be a guy when he gets into that meat of that SEC schedule. If he can really put up some big numbers, I think he'll be in that conversation as well. Tennessee's got a tough schedule this year. If he can figure out a way to get some big wins, I think he'll be part of it too.
Yeah, we will see. But for right now, I think that we need to get into some player props for this week. But before we do, Collin, how about you introduce yourself to the people a little bit here? We've brought you on. I mentioned that you are part of our college football team here, but tell the people a little bit about yourself.
I came from DraftKings Nation, where I was the college sports editor over there. So I did college football and college basketball. Prior to that, I covered a lot of teams. I covered South Florida for about 8-9 years, which is also my alma mater. I am sitting here in Tampa right now. Fortunately, I am on a high floor, so I am not drowned like so many people are around here right now, because it's still in hurricane recovery mode for sure. Yeah. But I had been an active bettor just on my own for years and years. And then when I worked at DraftKings Nation was a partnership with Vox Media. I had worked for Vox Media previously. They called me and they said, "Hey, do you want to write about college football and gambling full time?" I went, "Where do I sign?" And so I did that for about 5 years before coming over here. I think it's good because the quantitative information that you guys give, I think is just, it's so fantastic. And I think what the bettors get here from Unabated is an amazing amount of quantitative. I had always used the quantitative in putting my numbers together, but I think I mix in a little more qualitative as well, just because of some of the things that I've done around college sports. I read through the injury reports a little bit better. I might be able to text a beat writer at some school, and because I covered for so long, and be like, "Hey, what do you think here? Yes, no, maybe." And some context around college sports have been certainly helpful. So sort of blending those two a little bit more, I think, is something that I do a little bit differently. But yeah, it's been so great being here. And I, honestly, in my first 2 weeks, when is this? This is my 4th week. I've already been here 4 weeks. I have learned so much from these guys, and I think I've been able to help out a little bit too in how they're putting these numbers together. So let's see what happens. Another good week here. I think we got some opportunities on the board, and we'll show you a little bit of a different process a little bit later in the program as to how I'm coming up with my numbers. Got a little film room for you.
Yeah. I'm very excited for this. It's going to be a new segment that we're unveiling here, so stay tuned with us for that. But right now, before we jump into some numbers, the results have been good through a couple of weeks here. Weeks 1 through 5, 388 total projections for 260 edges. If you were $100 better, you've wagered around 30 grand by this point for a nice $2,400 profit and 8.2% ROI. Last week was a little bit of a down week when it comes to the prop projections out here, but we are bouncing back here. I'll tell you, I still ended up having a good week last week. Sorry to anyone that didn't, but I got lucky, I guess. I got the good ones. But hey, we are back. We have some great numbers. Of course, if you want the entire slate of college football player prop projections from us, you got to sign up at unabated.com. If you use the unabated.com/demo link, you can schedule yourself out a demo where I will most likely be the one sitting down with you on a Zoom call, showing you all of the tools that we have to offer. But if you go to unabated.com/pricing, you can pick yourself up a subscription for our premium that gets you all of our tools, all of our fantastic projections, and gets you all ready for the Saturday slate. But right now, Colin, I think that it is time that we jump in and we talk about a few numbers. So which game are we going to first on the slate? TCU and Houston is an interesting one coming up this afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. So this afternoon on the East Coast over here, it's going to be a night one. We have Houston hasn't scored a point in their last 2 games. That seems like a problem if you're trying to hit some overs.
Not ideal, but they are the number 1 pick.
I'm sorry.
They are.
Oh yeah, they are tank. Yeah, the Big 12's number 1 pick is definitely going to be on the table for them. Yeah. But they do get Joseph Manjack back, and if we could go ahead and take a look at his receiving yards projection here for this week. I think this is super interesting. Probably their most consistent guy. Doesn't mean a lot though when you're on a really, really bad team. Mm-hmm. And I think when you see this projection here, what are you seeing? I'm seeing about 22.7 in terms of yardage right now.
All right. You've got 22.7 for yards. And then what do you have for receptions here?
For receptions, I have, where am I? This is great radio. Oh, there it is. Thank you. For receptions, we are at, I'm not even seeing him on the board here in our projections for receptions at this point. He is not on the list. Well, let me get him over here.
All right. Well, we should be okay with just the receiving yardage here.
Yeah, let's go through that.
Yep. Folks, this is just what happens sometimes with
live radio. Sometimes, what are you gonna do? Yeah, he is not, unfortunately, in our. For some reason, he is on the one, but not on the other as of right now. But we're seeing some 30s out there in the streets.
Yeah,
and with a projection of 22.7, that certainly leads to an edge. I would be careful here, however, though, just because of the fact that he has been out. And has put up some bigger numbers in previous seasons. This season, I think he's at like 10 for 149 across 3 games, give or take, somewhere in that range. So you'd think a 30.5 makes a little sense. We've got him as an under. Just be wary here, just because I don't know if Houston has any other options to throw the football to at this point. And getting him back is something that they're definitely going to want to do and mix him into the offense. So you're going to see a big number there. And if we can hit the play, I think it will be looking around 30, I want to say 35.
If you here, you try sharing your screen there, maybe, because mine is just simply doesn't want to throw it up for us right now. So maybe
you got it. Okay, so let's see if I can. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have to hit reset here myself if we do it that way.
Yep. Hey, it's a Friday. We're chilling.
It's Friday. We're welcome to the new show. Yeah, here we go. Oh, here we go. I got it right here. So let's put it in.
Yeah, I think it's because I need the receptions in order to sim, as Captain Jack is saying there. So unless you have that number there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me because it did not pop up on our other screen. Sorry, Jack. Technical difficulties here. But I'm seeing some 22.7s, and it looks like at Caesars right now. The under is minus 129 at 30.5. It's projecting out to about a 30%, 35% edge. I would be cautious here. Just because I do feel like they're going to try and force feed him the ball to try and open up this offense a little bit on the outside. They've just been covered. These are received, not a lot of skill guys with a lot of talent. This is a complete rebuild for Willie Fritz right now at Houston. They just don't have the dogs on the outside that can do anything or can make some plays. So I would say that this is probably one that's going to jump out, but let's be a little bit cautious here. If we want to get right to your game here and the Cuse with the Rebs. I do believe, first of all, if you're a college football fan, this is one of the best games of the year so far. Great to have this on a Friday night. Great that they're going to get the national spotlight, especially with all of the chaos around UNLV right now. Although I think it's kind of started to calm down. I think people have started to accept that this is going to be a part of college football going forward. Yeah. And that guys are going to start stepping away after 4 games because they want to keep that precious season of eligibility, especially when they're going to be a free agent no matter where they go. This happened at a few schools this week. UCF had to deal with guys leaving. There have been some other schools where people are just stepping away in the middle of the year. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this affects games in the long run and how, players line up their seasons. Do you maybe not play in an FCS game early in the year to try and get more reps against better teams? And then to use that game tape that you're going to get from those 4 games to help you get your next job, wherever that's going to be the following season, to help you get more NIL money. Yeah. These are things that coaches are already thinking about. And the players are going to start implementing that into their strategies as well. So keep that in mind for future. But let's just go right to the passing yards here for Hajj Malik Williams.
Worth pointing out with Hajj Malik Williams, like he looked fine last week coming in as the new surprise starter.
Correct. Yeah, he absolutely tore it up. It seems like obviously the team really rallied behind him. When you have a starting quarterback, the guy that you're counting on, the guy that you're leaning on, just go, I'm out of here. This isn't enough money. I think it sort of galvanized the locker room a little bit. You could see a lot of enthusiasm last week. The "Who is Sluka" chant did go ring through Allegiant Stadium at one point against Fresno State. And they're taking on a Cuse team, which, with Kyle McCord, Kyle McCord is Kyle McCord. He's the same Kyle McCord that you saw at Ohio State. Pretty standard, but I think defensively, they're struggling a little bit, especially against the pass. Defensive success rate is 89th in the country. Only 42.1% success against the pass. Williams has shown that he can clearly throw it around, through for over 300 and change last week. And so you're seeing this number right now at, our projection is at 209, I believe.
208.8.
208.8. So at 208.8. And it looks like some 177s to 183s in the streets out here. Looks really good to me against what should be a soft pass defense. And UNLV, this is a statement game for them. They're good. This is not just a game that you need to win for your conference or whatever else. It's a non-conference game, but you're getting the light shown on you. And that doesn't happen for UNLV very often. They don't get a lot of, the old standalone game, as John Rothstein would call it. They don't get a lot of these. This is a recruiting game for them as well. If they're serious about making inroads in Southern California and recruiting into schools around UNLV, such as like Gorman and Basic and places like that, if they want to get those kids to stay home, this is a commercial. And they're going to want to throw the ball and they're going to want to show some offense. So I really think that Malik could really go nuts tonight. He's against the type of defense that he can do it. And they got skill players all around that can make some plays. So this is one that I really like. I think Malik could really go over here and hit a big number.
Yeah, I mean, I could see this game really being a shootout as well. And like you said, Syracuse, not that great against the pass when it comes to the defense here. Like this could be a game that ends up, and I hope it's a real barn burner because I want to see some points. I want to see an exciting game when I'm there, but we will see about the game tonight. Now, how about the receiving game? Anyone that we want to look at there?
So for receptions, and let me pull that up here.
Ricky White is the only one that we've got a projection for, although that might not be the case in terms of the import versus what it actually is.
Yeah, let me get that up here just 1 second. For Ricky, I'm seeing 6.2 receptions and 81.8 yards.
Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a slight edge to the under, but not really enough that I want to really go about it. BJ saying, question, do we follow the numbers in green? Yeah, green is what you're really looking for here. I personally am looking for stuff more in like the 10 to 15% range to start really jumping on.
Yeah, I agree. You don't need to be taking the small edges here, as Chris likes to say. There's enough on the board where you can really take some shots at some bigger numbers. And I think that's probably going to be the way to go and the way to play this year. In fact, and looking at Ricky White, we're not seeing any 10% anywhere here. So that number looks pretty on target. You're Aronde Gadsden. What do you see? What have you seen out of him this season, Tom? Because I have liked what I've seen. I think him and McCord certainly have a connection, and I think that might be a spot where against the UNLV defense, that's okay. They're not anything spectacular, but they've been a little bit high variance as well. That might be a better spot. So we're seeing some Aronde Gadsden, 5 receptions and 69.2 yards. Pretty nice number.
Very nice number. I'm a little worried about Gadsden. I love his over. I'll be playing it. He really did not seem like himself 2 weeks ago. Like I kind of threw out last week. You're playing Sister Mary's School for the Blind. Like it is what it is. Kind of toss out those FCS games, but their last game against a real opponent playing Stanford, it didn't look good. He got rattled early on and very clearly just wasn't able to find his way into the game from that point. He even sat out a couple series. So stuff like that worries me a little bit, but you've had 2 weeks to get right now. He is such a huge part of this offense. I really like him. Do we have numbers for Trevor Pena? Because he's the other guy that I would be looking to on the Syracuse offense as far as someone who can just really break break a bunch of long plays. I know we had Hatcher unders 2 weeks ago, and that kind of sank us. But as far as the Syracuse offense goes, Gadsden and Pena are the ones to look at.
Yeah, Pena, 69.8 yards himself, also a nice number, and 5.9 receptions. So very, very similar projections for Gadsden and Pena.
And I'm sorry, what do you say for yardage?
69.8.
All right, let's see if we find anything here. As BJ says, great job, guys. I'll definitely stick around after my trial. Everything is clear, just lost on a few things. Hey, thank you so much, BJ. And by the way, if you do want a demo, if you want to walk through, unabated.com/demo up there. I'll sit down with you and run you through everything. Yeah, no edges here on Trevor Pena, though, but I like that Gadsden play. That's one that I'll definitely be on.
I'll be on Gadsden as well. I just think that there's going to be some vulnerabilities. And also, when we look at UNLV's defense, defensive success rate, 27th in the country, 35.1 against the pass. That looks pretty good. To be fair to UNLV, though, they haven't exactly played the roughest schedule I've ever seen in FCS or in FBS so far. Not a lot of teams that are really going to push them and challenge them. This will be by far their toughest test of the season. They're catching
I don't really think that I trust the Mountain West all that much. And looking at this, looking at this game, looking at the spread here, it's up to Syracuse 5.5, Syracuse 6. If we go back, this was, it's down to 6.5, but this was a game that opened 7, got all the way down to 3.5 at one point.
Yep.
And has now rocketed back up here.
That 7 was
a market movement.
Yeah, that 7 was an early, and I think as soon as what Malik Williams did last week, I think the open at 3.5 after the game, I think makes a heck of a lot of sense. So strong, like really, really looked fantastic. Team was really, really committed and together. And with such adversity, you can see why the markets were a little wary going into that game against Fresno. But they certainly proved it on the field, which is what you're looking for. If we want to jump around here, let's get into the early window. I believe Pitt is the early window game that we might want to take a look at here.
All right. And which market?
Let's go to rushing. Let's go to rushing yards here.
Let's do rushing yards for Pitt. As Sports Videos asks, how many hours a week go into college football projections? Feel like there's too many guys. Colin, I'll let you take that. Although I will say we're not doing every team in every game when it comes to these. That's how they limit the time somewhat.
So for sure. So I'm chipping in, and also while I'm doing this, I'm tracking injuries and I'm chatting back and forth with some of the guys. But there is a serious amount of work that goes into this. I was certainly surprised at how big this team was and how much knowledge that they bring to the process. these guys have really, you can tell that they've done this for years and years and years, and they don't get distracted by the little things that you might see that a casual bettor might overvalue or undervalue. They seem to weight the information that's coming in really correctly. And I think that's the edge that you're going to get if you're a subscriber to Unabated Sports, of course. But plug. Good plug. But for this week, let's talk about Pitt, because there's a very interesting scenario here where we're getting a player back from NCAA suspension here. And that hasn't happened for a week 5 very often. But Rodney Hammond, who was their best guy in 3 seasons at Pitt, 329 carries, 1,511 yards, 14 touchdowns, and also 190 yards and 2 TDs as a pass catcher. He hadn't played yet this year because the NCAA put him in fake jail. And now he's been paroled, and he's going to be able to play the rest of the season. How that affects what happens on the field this week, I think, is super interesting. So let's take a look at Des Reed here, who is the listed running back for Pitt. And we've got him at 11.5 carries and 56.3 yards.
I was worried for a second when we were going through that, and he's not on the screen. I was like, oh no, good save with that.
Yeah, this is because of that. I think we can expect a fresh running back with 3 years of experience and a really good record in Hammond to get a lot of carries this week. I think that's going to move Reed's numbers significantly down, even as bad as the UNC defense has been, because they've been at points an abomination. Shout out to giving up 70 to James Madison a couple weeks ago. I think Reed,
some absolutely monster lines here.
Yeah, these are big numbers, and I feel like that this is going to be a spot where there's just going to be a shared backfield where there hasn't been one before. So I think Reed, some Reed unders here feel real good. They're going to want to get Hammond involved instantly and right away, whether they do it as a split back system or whether they have him, as the starter. He might even be RB1. Teammates really rallied around him. Team rallied around him as he was going through this NCAA process. I think it'll be interesting to see, but I'm big on some Reed unders this week. No fault of his, just getting a teammate that's going to be really a big part of what they do this weekend.
Nitish saying FanDuel just dropped their Reed line.
You're welcome.
Everyone pulled these earlier today. This was not us. And Matthew G says, "Can you show receptions on the receiving yard screen? More info for one of my local posts." No problem. We can absolutely handle that. And sorry guys, I guess we won't be able to hit these Reed lines after all.
So they've all been pulled.
They've all been pulled. So that's unfortunate.
That'll be interesting. So let's see where this gets weighted and who RB1 is going to be. That's something you're probably going to want to keep an eye on in the lead ups tomorrow. When you see, who's warming up on the field, keep an eye on some Pitt beat writers, some UNC beat writers might be out there as well, but keep an eye on who's going with the ones in practice. You know what I mean? When they're warming up, you're going to warm up with your positional groups. Ones are going to warm up with ones. Twos are going to warm up with twos. Who's that number one? Who's that RB1? That'll be a big key. And some beat writer out there should have it by position group. Keep an eye on that for sure. I think that'll, if you can get a late prop down tomorrow, that might be a really good spot for it, depending on who it is.
Yeah. Now, how about Florida? Let's go down to Gatorville here.
Let's talk about the Florida Gators. So
you're done with Pitt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're done with Pitt here. So let's talk about the Gators. I don't want to necessarily step too much on what we might be talking about here in just a second. Mm-hmm. But hold on one second here. If I can pull this up. Here we go. But yeah, excuse me. I'm in receiving yards. That didn't make any sense. Let me get to rushing yards here. I think this is going to be a super interesting game for a lot of reasons. The Gators are not great, obviously offensively, and they're also running into a UCF team that, while not great against the pass, has actually been pretty good against the run. So where we find some value here will be very interesting. I think we might see the Gators just try and chuck it all over the field. And also that might be because of game script as well, because they're going to have to, this is a game where they could get in trouble. The Gator defense is bad. They might be playing from behind at home early, and they might have to start throwing the ball. And if you make UF one-dimensional, they simply don't have the horses this year to do anything in a one-dimensional stat. So you might get some cheap yards, some backyard yards, but I think we'll see some opportunities here, especially in the run game. Looking right now, first of all, let's flip the other side of the ball here, though. Let's talk about RJ Harvey, who we have at 21.1 rushes and 111 yards.
That's comical.
I mean, who's the favorite here? Who's the best team in Florida? Who's the team with SEC money? That's just wild. Does seem a little bit high though, especially with the Gators coming off a bye week here. The other thing to keep in mind is that while the Florida defense, EPA, 95th in the country, that's not great in year 3 for Billy Napier, that's for sure. But they are a little bit better, a smidge better against the pass than they are against the run. Tied for 53rd against the pass, 77th against the run. But the big thing is EPA per drive. And Florida or UCF under Gus Malzahn, very aggressive on 4th down, like to keep drives going, like to extend the clock. Gators 108 defensively in EPA drive. That just unacceptable, unacceptably bad. But this number still might be a little too high. They're going to force KJ Jefferson to throw the football. They're going to stack the box a little bit here. And I do think Harvey will have a tough time going for big. He might break one, but you're not going to be able to force feed one running back if you're the University of Central Florida, because you just don't have the size on the lines. So I do like under, even though a lot of the signs are pointing towards the Gators having troubles stopping the run. I do like this under a tremendous amount, actually.
The other thing you have to factor in is game script here. Like, is UCF going to be in a position where they can run the ball this much and really tote the rock?
Correct. The Gators are going to go, they'll use some 2-quarterback system, but they're not going super quick this year either. Yeah. This is not one of these, old Spurrier pace Gator teams. Billy's been much more controlled since he got to the SEC than he ever was when he was in the Sun Belt. So I do think that the pace will be a factor here. But for me, I just don't think UCF is going to be able to open up the holes on the line the way that they have previously. They'll use a lot of shift and motion to try and do that. And you might get, Harvey might break one, but he's also going to have 3 and 4 carries that might go for minimal yardage or even net loss to get to that one break. I do think they're going to struggle. If he beat, but as they say, when you're scheming this up, if you're scheming up a running team like Gus Malzahn does, your job as a coach is to get your running back one-on-one with the safety. I just don't think they're going to struggle to scheme that up. But if he gets one-on-one with the safety, he's going to be able to make a play. You're trying to fade that here.
Yeah. All right. Well, Collin, I think that we are at a point here. I know that you've got someone that you want to bring on. We've got a nice special guest and a brand new segment coming in. We're going to be doing it a lot more with Chris K back in studio with us here. But for now, I'm going to toss it over to you for this next segment here, and we'll see you in a minute.
Hi, friends. Collin Sherwin alongside a very not well-lit Seth Varnador. Seth is a former Division II football coach, a friend of mine, and someone who dives deep into the film on several different schools, including the University of Florida, the University of South Florida, other places around here. And what we're looking to do is take the information, the quantitative information you can get from Unabated, and add it to the qualitative information of a coach who goes through the film, breaks down tape, and can get us some edges out here in the streets, particularly on player props. We've got 2 for you this week. Seth is unfortunately also just went through the hurricane, just like I did down here in Florida. And so his lighting isn't nearly as pretty as mine right now. But even in the midst of a hurricane, he's here to help you make some money this weekend. And we've got 2 bets on player props that we think are going to be a big advantage for you. Seth, let's start with Pitt UNC. Eli Holstein is looking at somewhere between 287 and 290.5 yards this weekend on the road in Chapel Hill. Tell me why this number is going to be an advantage for the player.
Yeah, Pitt's hit. Holstein has hit the 300-yard mark several times this season. North Carolina, anytime they've played a team with a pulse in the passing game, they've given up 300 yards. Even a team without a pulse, they gave up 300 yards to Charlotte. So I think Holstein can get there. He's got a really good offensive coordinator in Caden Bell. They got a really good receiving core. And another part that's kind of interesting is North Carolina has been really bad guarding running backs in the passing game. They're giving up a 75% success rate and 0.8 EPA per play when running backs are targeted in the passing game. Pitt has Des Reed, who's one of the best receiving backs in the country. you'll see they get him the ball in different ways. Here he's running an option route down in the red zone. Holstein steps up wide open for a touchdown. He's, I think, going to be a big factor in the passing game. He does not have any receiving props that I can see, but Holstein does have his passing prop. They're going to throw the ball around a ton, and I don't think North Carolina is going to be good enough to stop them.
So we're seeing some pretty high projections for Holstein already. Obviously, this North Carolina defense, coughing up 70 at some points this season. They're pretty bad. But that 0.8 EPA, if you're not familiar with the stat, that means every time a team throws the ball to the running back, they are virtually giving up 0.8 of a full point, which is just absolutely absurd. Rodney Hammond does come back for Pitt this week. He was on NCAA suspension, but he is mostly going to be a primary running guy. When you see Reed in there, you're going to see a lot of wheel, a lot of things coming out of the backfield, a lot of stuff to the flat, and that's all going to be passing yardage for you as well. So we like Holstein as an over this week. Looks like the quantitative side is also a big fan of Reed or of Holstein as well. We'll get into that too. But also while we're here, let's go to the Florida Gators. Montrell Johnson taking on the UCF Knights defense this week. Seeing some 71s basically everywhere right now, 71.5 yards receiving for Johnson, who is the primary back for the Gators. This is a program that you cover more extensively, I think, as much as anybody. What are you seeing out of the film this week that makes you think, and also some of the rotation this week that makes you think that Johnson might be a good play?
Yeah, so when Montrell Johnson, the last 2 years, when he's going over that number, the 71.5, he's usually busting an explosive run, and he's been kind of getting the main source of the carries. I think he'll still get the main source of the carries, but Florida has been rotating in their young backs. They're a little bit more explosive. Here's Trayon Webb against Mississippi State, Jaden Ball against Mississippi State. These guys have started to play more and more as the season goes on. So I think he will get less carries than normal. And the other part of it is they're playing a UCF defense that is really poor against the pass. TCU kind of shredded them in the passing game. They're one of the worst in the country in terms of EPA against the pass. And Colorado even got in on it last week. We talked a little bit about Shadur, and he went over his touchdown number last week pretty easily. So, they're just – I think the game script as well, I don't know how good the Florida defense is, so UCF should be able to score. I would say I do know how good they are. They're not good, but UCF should be able to score. So I think Florida, in terms of game state, may have to throw the ball a little bit more, and they are a pretty decent throwing team. They've got some good receivers. So I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more, so that's less runs for Montrell Johnson, and he's splitting carries. I think he'll probably go under the number, which he did against a really bad Mississippi State team a couple weeks ago as well.
Yeah, we like under here. Also, something to keep in mind, UCF, if you look at, basically this year, Johnson's got one big explosive run against Miami in the first game. It went 11 for 109, but a lot of it was on one play. UCF against allowing explosives, they're very, very good against explosive run, 98th percentile in the country against explosive runs. So also they should be able to get a lot of those stops. It's just going to free up more space for the Gators to throw the ball. They might have to throw the ball more. And Johnson just might not get the work rate out of the backfield that he would need to get to 71.5 yards this week. So we like under there. We will keep these coming to you every week. But for Seth, I'm Colin. Thanks for doing this. And Tom, back to you.
And thank you guys so much. Colin, excellent work there. We greatly appreciate it. And that is going to be where we are on those two player props. So where do we want to head to next here?
Well, let's back up and go to I was trying to hold off the Holstein till we got to the video, but let's go back to Holstein here. So let's go to passing yards. I saw some 287 to 290. That was in the streets previously. And
I have some good news. While that video was going, we got the better projection numbers uploaded in here. So we should have everyone already ready to go. And of course, we don't have Holstein.
Really? Oh, I was seeing, excuse me. I have that here. How did that? It's live radio. Can you tell? Yep. I have that right here though. Hold on. I believe computer don't break, but I do have it. No, I don't have it. Shoot. I was seeing some 320s out there. The previous projection I saw was about 320.
Oh, wow.
I think it was like 320 and like 320.8, something like that. Yeah, it was a big number. So we were already on it here. Let let me make sure that is correct. Eli's coming.
Yeah, we were looking at some we were obviously looking at some unders here with the 320. Do you remember what his completions were at?
Excuse me. 337. It was 337 for yardage was the projection here. And then for passing attempts or completions, are we looking?
Completions.
I think we're looking at okay. For completions. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on the board, unfortunately. But yeah, we're seeing basically some 337s. I do not have a number though the other way, but we saw some 337. I think this looks great. It's just an ideal matchup. You're going against a team that in UNC that just yards are free. You know, I mean, receivers run unimpeded. It's almost like they didn't fire their defensive coordinator after last season. So yeah, I think this is probably, Eli's probably the best number on the board that I've seen right now. So if you can jump that while it's still available, but I do think we're going to drive that one up a little bit. This could easily be a 400+ yard game for Holstein for sure.
Woo! All right, we love hearing that. Do we want to stick with any of the receivers in the Pitt game, or are you ready to head to the next one here?
Let's go ahead and head to the next one. I think let me go ahead and get some rushing yardage up here. Were there any questions in the chat about who people might be thinking about or looking for so far this week? And
no one quite yet, but yeah, chat. Feel free to throw in your questions. We'll take a look at our projections, see what we can hold up for you. I know BJ is curious about this Oregon Ducks game, which I'm sure is one that's going to be being released with the projections, but maybe we can give him a little teaser. Well, looks like we definitely can give him a little teaser because we do have those numbers in here. So how about we talk about that Oregon game?
Yes, for sure. Super interesting spot here. I think this Michigan State team obviously in flux. It's a year zero situation. I'm not real sure. Tough team to get a read on, quite honestly, for me. I've struggled. I think the number around 23.5 is correct. When I did my numbers, that's certainly what it came out to. Plus, you've also got the weirdness, Michigan State doesn't play a lot of Friday night road games on the West Coast. Like this is going to be for a program, these Big Ten programs that haven't really had to do anything too funky before, and especially traveling across the country early in the season. I think it's definitely interesting. What are we looking at rushing numbers here for, like a Jordan James, perhaps something along those lines?
Yeah, we've got Jordan James, and we're looking at his over here, and then Kayron Lynch Adams, his under seems like more of the vibe as far as those two go. We can also switch over to the passing market after that. But what do you think about these running backs here?
Yeah, I think that's probably just because of workload. We, projecting James to have far more carries against an MSU defense that at times can certainly give up big plays. That seems like the right numbers to me, but this is just our projections team factoring in the workload for which guys and how we're going to split these carries going down the rest of the way here. In terms of attempts, as we get here, seeing 17.2 attempts for James, and I'm not seeing a number for Lynch Adams here, but I am seeing 17.2. So if that is the case, then you're probably looking at Lynch Adams probably in the single digits for sure as his projected number of carries. So expect Jordan James to get a lot of the ball for an Oregon team that I think is still rounding into shape, but it certainly looked better the last 2 weeks than they did the first two. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that we had some good questions here from BJ about Dylan Gabriel, how Dylan Gabriel is going to stack up. So let's go to the passing yards here and let's take a look at that. Not really seeing an edge on Dylan Gabriel here. It looks like we have him pegged right at where the market is on this one.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm not seeing anything, and let me go ahead and pull up here the defensive stats for Michigan State because they've certainly been pretty varied this year. 86th EPA defense, not particularly great. 42.7% success rate, 43.1% success rate against the pass, but a lot better against the rush, 32.5%. So they're getting stops against the run, but they're not necessarily getting stops against the pass. I think that might lean you a smidge over with Gabriel here, but not really seeing any edge here. This for me would be a complete stay away. Friday nights are weird. I would just, to me, this is not, especially in a big spread game, this could get to the point where Oregon blows them out, throws the ball all over the place, gets up 42-3, and then just Gabriel heads to the bench, and then all of a sudden you miss your number on a backup quarterback. That's, the kind of variance that you're looking at here. For me, I just think there's better opportunity than the board. I'm going to stay away here.
Yeah, and I get that it is a classic Big Ten rivalry here, Oregon and Michigan State. So much history and bad blood between these two bitter conference rivals here. But you have to think that MSU maybe doesn't get up for this one quite as much.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is tough. And again, I don't underemphasize this. As somebody, I've been around teams, I've traveled with teams in college. It's a very weird process. A lot of these kids have never had to go over on a weeknight, and you're messing with routines here. They're not going to have like the veterans that have had to make these cross country trips, especially East going West. We all know about the body clocks thing, West going East in morning games. That can always be, that's something you definitely need to factor in your handicapping with these Pac-12 teams, or excuse me, now Big Ten teams, USC, UCLA, when they're going East and playing these noon kicks. Definitely something that you want to be aware of, but it also works the other way too, especially on a weeknight where you're out of routine, because normally you would practice, your final good practice is Thursday. You might do shells and shorts on Friday, fly out, walk through, and game on Saturday. You've taken away like a full practice day. Wednesdays get a little wonky. You're going to do your final full pads practice on Wednesday, move everything back a day. It does get a little weird out there sometimes, especially in big spread games. I'd stay away here.
But how about the receiving market? Because it does look like we do have some options here. BJ, maybe you took that Dylan Gabriel prop a little too early, but we have questions in the chat. Schuyler asking, what do we think on the wide receiver split for MSU? And Jeff Byrne just wants to know anything else in the games for tonight. So here we go. Here's another one for tonight here. Let's talk first about those Michigan State. I see MSU and I instantly say, oh yeah, Montclair State. This isn't the first time I've done this on this show. But what do we think about this receiver split here with Monterey Foster and K'Ron Lynch-Adams and Jack Veiling?
So definitely in our projections, it looks like in terms of receiving yards, I think the K'Ron Lynch-Adams one is super interesting. I
thought that was a mistake. I was like, oh, we must have swapped his receptions and receiving yards, but it does not appear that that's the case.
That is correct. He is projected at 4.6 yards right now in terms of receiving, and that is not a joke. I struggle with this. Again, I'm struggling to handicap this Michigan State team just at this point in the season. I don't have a lot of good feel here, but a number like that where it's 4.6, the randomness factor is just going to be very, very high. All it takes is one play. All it takes is one bust. So if we go towards Aiden Childs, who is projected right now, we have him at 200 yards passing, 200.4 yards passing. That does imply that we do think Michigan State's going to throw the ball with some relative consistency here, and probably with a chance to make some plays, whether that is while the game is still under construction or whether they're down 3 touchdowns and just throwing the ball because of game script reasons. Also something to keep in mind with a 23.5 point spread. Definitely leaning a little bit towards some Childs overs, it looks like right now, seeing some I'm seeing a 175 still for Childs out there.
That's got to be stale.
Must be. And some light 185s, 186s, 180s. I do see a 180 at Caesars. Yeah, I think there's probably going to be better value on the board. As far as the receiver split, I think at that point you're just getting into a very, very high randomness, and can a guy, make basically one play down the field, and does he do it or not? Just seems a little. I would stick with things that I think have a little more consistency to them and a little bit less variance. Where it's just a one play scenario. I don't think that's great.
Meanwhile, Terrence Ferguson on the other side here is looking like a decent overplay.
Coming back there. Yeah, it does look like that. We've got him at 40.7, especially in a game where there could be a big number. If that guy's going to be on the field down 3 touchdowns in the second half, and you're starting to shift the coverage maybe a little bit, because you're not going to want to get beat by a team's best guy when you're up 3 touchdowns. You're going to rotate the coverage over there and make somebody else hopefully drive down the field and beat you. So yeah, I think, with Foster being the primary, could be an interesting spot. Hadn't been one I really considered previously, but I do think that could be an interesting spot for sure.
Yeah. All right. We have to we do have to get to Ashton Jeanty, but we do have a couple minutes here before we have to head out. Let's first talk. Voodoo Ranger wants to know about Cam Cook rushing attempts here. So let's talk about Cam Cook and CP. CP still says, last week you reported the ROI numbers is over 5% edges. Was that the same for this week in the season total? I don't believe you explicitly said it. If so, it was mentioned to look for 10 plus edges. Just want to reconcile the statements. Yes, 5% edges and up for the results there. And then I personally look for 10%, but I probably lower that down a little bit when you can lower it down a little bit when you're dealing with the college football numbers, since this is our in-house stuff. I'm just telling you what I personally play there, as far as that goes. All right. Let's talk about Cam Cook real quick when we get into the rush attempts here. Let's see if we have something for him. If you have his numbers, well, we've already got him. Boom. Yep. Okay. So we're really liking this. Cam Cook versus Houston tonight. 13 and a half attempts at ESPN Bet at plus 103 here. Let's see if we have any other numbers in the market. No, ESPN Bet is the only place that apparently has this up right now, but we are definitely loving the over 13 and a half there. To answer your question, Voodoo Ranger, stay cool.
I'm seeing a little different. Hold on one second here for me, Tom, because I just want to make sure we give the right number out here.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to feel bad if I just said all that and then it turns out.
I want to make sure that we're giving out there. Oh, there we go. Hold on one second. I'm seeing a 13.4. Is that what you're? I don't know where you're. Okay. I'm seeing 13.4 on Cam Cook, as the current, but you might have the updated number in the system.
I probably do. Yeah, I probably do.
Yeah. I think you've got. Hold on one second here. Yeah.
I'm just going to refresh that out then because I got my numbers. I got my numbers during the show. So
no, I think you've got the right number there and I've got the wrong one. So definitely, I just want to make sure that's correct. Just as FYI on Cam Cook this year, last 5 games, 15 carries, 14, 11, 13, and 20. The 20 was against the Stanford team when they were, really trying to take away the pass, and they leaned on him pretty heavy on the run. That was a game I did watch. So feels very overy for sure. TCU's going to run the ball. They're going to have to run the ball, especially late, because they're going to be up 1 million.
Yeah. All right. Now let's get to it. The big question on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Ashton GT. We obviously do not have him projected for 0 yards. Do you have a number for us here?
For Genty, let me get to yards here. Chris makes this look so smooth,
I know he does,
and it's killing me because I can't quite figure out how he does it. I guess practice makes perfect, but I am definitely seeing some struggle rushing. I'm looking for rushing yards. There it is. Okay, I've got a 197.45.
And what do you have for carries?
And for carries, I have.
This is a comical projection.
I know. It's insane. I do not, for some reason, I don't have that. And I don't know why that is. See if I can reload it here.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, you take a look at that. Let me see if I can find it here as well.
For sure.
But,
yeah, I do not have it. Which is just wild, because I have they work together, and so I know that the one is correct and the other one is not. Sign out, sign back in here. Maybe that'll work. Turn it off, turn it back on. Never hurts. I think the bigger issue though is that I think with Genty, you just have to accept that he's going to make some plays because he's unbelievable back there. He's shifty and is really hard to tackle, super low to the ground. It gives you Barry Sanders vibes, not going to lie. I'm not saying he's going to become Barry Sanders at the next level, but you see the way that he runs. He can go between the tackles, but where he really seems to make some plays is once he gets on the edge and, talk about that, get one-on-one with the safety, that safety is washed. Once he breaks to that second level and he can find a way to get through, that safety is absolutely cooked. And I do feel like that the variance is going to be super high on this.
I feel like it's just at the end of the day here, it's probably one that you want to stay away from at this point because you're dealing with such cartoon numbers. You're going to have better options and better opportunities on other guys. Like, you don't want to bet his under because you don't want to bet on him to fail, but you don't really want to be taking overs on numbers this high.
Couple things to keep in mind with Utah State as well. 92nd against the pass, but 111 against the pass, 127 against the run, and overall defense 123 in terms of EPA per drive. They're bad. Yeah. So that's how you get a number that's 190 something in a college game, which is crazy because normally that's 3 college games. Utah State's really bad. But again, at that point, it's just becoming about variance. Where, if you get an interception and he's only running the ball in from the 30 or the 40 instead of from his own side of the field, that's going to hurt you. In terms of total carries, how many total carries will he get? Probably plenty, but you've got to figure him at going, 8 yards per, that's probably a pretty decent baseline. And it'll be a lot of 0, 1, 3, -2, 50, and it'll be a pretty high variance play, but I do wish we had that number. I mean, there's just better value out here on the board. If, for our subscribers, I think you'll find some stuff that's a lot better out there than playing a guy who's in the 190s. Quite frankly, I had under on Genty last week. How many carries did he have? I think he had like 23.
Jim Robinson pointing out, like, FanDuel's got him 80-1 for NCAA rushing record. That's,
can I get it? Can I get a no on these? Can I get a no? If you're going to hang these numbers, I saw a number for Genty last week that was minus 20,000. So 200 to win $1, and it was at 70. So he had to go under 70 yards and 200. Can I get a no on that? Because if he gets hurt, he's a tiny guy. All it takes is him getting hurt. And if you can be 80-1 on a no, on the equivalent side, I'll take it.
Yep. And Nitish also points out, does the simulator even work for numbers this high? Exactly. It's not dealt for these super fringe use cases like this. So it's another thing to keep in mind. But Collin, we are out of time here. Yep. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on today. We have to get rolling because coming up in just a minute here, I'm going to be on with Derek Carty. So just stick to the channel. We're going to be switching to NFL Week 5 props from here. But once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to stick around. Derek and I are going to be talking to NFL right after this. And Collin, it has been an absolute pleasure. We'll be seeing you on the show plenty more as we bring back you and Seth for some of those fantastic segments. I'm looking forward to that as well. And thank you so much for filling in for Chris K here today. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the great work you are doing on these projections. Thank you so much, man. It has been a pleasure. We will see you all next week. And right now, stay tuned. Derek Carty and I coming up in just a minute.